into our first featured item for today, which involves workshop orders and purchasing parts. Now, I have many conversations about workshop processes, and it can be super complicated at times. But fundamentally, when I ask the question of customers, what would you like to achieve in this area? What are your goals? And the response I get is generally, well, I want to get stuff into the workshop. We know we need to get it into the workshop periodically or ad hoc if it's a damage. We want to fix it. We want to inspect it. We want to turn it around and we want to get it out of the door on rent again. Okay. So if it's sat idle, it really isn't earning the business money. So that's, affecting the bottom line. So in order to do that, we need to make sure we're as efficient as we can be. Obviously, as I mentioned, things happen, things get damaged. So we need to be able to manage things in a more reactive way, but we still need an efficient process to help us get assets mobile again and as quickly as possible. So then I ask what the challenges are. And I hear that sometimes it's hard to coordinate parts for routine or more complicated services. So assets can sit up for days or weeks on end, or even more. So that's just one example where we start to see inefficiencies creeping in to the process, and utilization starts to go down. And we want to be able to address that. As I mentioned, that's affecting the bottom line. So we need a better control. We need better visibility of our inventory, and other needs as we manage a very hectic and busy workflow. There's a lot of moving parts. So let's take an engine, for example. We're not going to stock every single part that exists on an engine. So sometimes we need to purchase on demand, just as much as we want to hold more commonly used parts on the shelf. And in fact, one of the other items we're going to talk about today, as I mentioned, is about managing min-max inventory control levels and also consignment stock. Just so we can show you the features that you never run out of the things that you need the most. So we'll come on to that a little bit later. But for now, I'd like to focus on third-party purchase orders for parts and labor. So as I mentioned, instead of using a conventional method of raising, say, a standalone purchase order in the system or outside of the system to a vendor, and let's face it, it can take many phone calls, many emails, lots of coordination to inquire about stock, inquire about certain parts. Maybe it's a certain part that is not commonly available in the marketplace. We all know, obviously, we've had lots of shortages of materials in the world of recently. So we need, effective ways in which we can manage those. So we devised a feature where users can link into or through the workshop order processing, can link through to a third-party purchase order, so we can bond those two documents together and manage those effectively. So let's jump into the product, and then we can take a bit of a deeper dive. So if I go into a workshop order, and let's create one I have a mini excavator. So let's find my asset number for my mini excavator. So asset 3229, and I'm going to assign it to my repair service. We'll start that today. Okay, so if I jump through to my worksheet and then my lines, so the first thing I can do when it comes to workshop orders, I can actually predefine what my parts list is. That helps us with the visibility piece. If we know it's a routine service and we know we're doing something with the engine, we can predefine those parts that we know we're going to use on that particular engine service. So as you can see in my example here, 3 parts linked to this repair. First thing I can do, I can actually go ahead and open up one of my lines, and I can come down to my allocate button, and you can see that I have 3 options. So I can actually look up my inventory. So I can put a quantity 1 in my inventory there, and I can actually look up, and the system will tell me, do I have this on the shelf? So with this particular item, I actually do. It tells me the bin location that part actually exists in, and it tells me how many I've got available to pick. But let's say, for instance, I don't have that feature available to me. Then I also have an option to link through to third-party parts. And down the bottom, you can also see there the option to link it through to a purchase order. Okay, so you can see all already, whilst I'm processing a work order, I don't have to come out of the system and go somewhere else to look for this information. The information can come to me within a couple of clicks. And that's really helpful where we're trying to blend a mix of using our own inventory, our own stock that's on our own shelves in our own warehouse, but also complementing that when we need to order on demand with a third party. So I'm just going to back out of here for a second and come back to my main parts list. And you can see down the bottom of my screen, I have a button here that says purchase. So if I click on that button, the system can be clever enough to be configured to hold preferred vendors against specific parts. So you can see here I've got my 3 items. I have my EGR valve, my workshop part, and my fuel sensor here. These are the items that I need to purchase. And the system will tell me who the vendor is, as I mentioned, and we can also hold the price lists for those parts against those records in the system as well. So we're really trying to be, as I mentioned, efficient in the way that we're processing things. So I want the system to tell me who is the vendor that I get the best rate from, who's the vendor that I get the best service from, so I can actually make the right decisions for my business. So what I can do with this is I can mix and match, and I can select the lines that I want to create a purchase order against, and I can hit this button down the bottom here that says create contract. Now, this is automatically going to default to who the main preferred vendor is for the product, so we can set that in the system. And we can also say to that vendor when we create the purchase order, are we delivering this directly to the job site? So is this a repair that's happening on site, or are we going to deliver that part to the branch? So if we select the site option, when we go to the address section in the purchase order, it's going to default to the project address that the asset's out on rent to currently. If it's not, if it's in the workshop, we switch to the branch and the parts will be delivered to us in the workshop. So there's a little handshake purple icon next to the vendor lookup. I can click on that, and that will actually give me an option to do a wide-ranging search of the system to say, okay, who else are my preferred vendors for that product in the system? So I have now 2 options available to me. So in my system, I have a construction supplies vendor and I also have a general supplies vendor. So again, being able to make the right decisions, making sure we're using the right vendors that are giving us those competitive rates and the competitive service advantage, the system can be clever enough to tell us who we need to use. So I'm going to stick with general supplies for this. So I click the OK button, it's going to go away. It's going to register that, and then the next screen that's going to pop up is a purchase contract entry. So this is now where we're starting to bond that workshop order into that purchase order. So you can see in my purchase reference, the system will copy across the workshop order number. And if I navigate across to my products tab, all of those lines are going to automatically pre-populate. And that's super helpful. So again, we're just reducing the double entry in the system. The quantities will pull through as well as pricing as well. So I also mentioned the fact that we have the ability to create vendor price lists and link those through to item codes. So you can do that manually, or there's an upload routine. So if you change your price and you renegotiate rates, we also have routines where you can upload those prices, let's say on an annual basis, and manage those price lists effectively in the system. So again, reducing clicks, reducing touches, reducing, I guess, the ability to introduce human error when we're keying in rates. If we've got predefined rates, then we don't need to touch the system, just let the system do its thing. So essentially when we're creating that purchase order, because we're pulling all of that information in from pre-existing data in the system, there's very little I need to do with this. I may need to, if I wanted to add a new item on, or I wanted to add some, if the vendor's charging us a delivery charge, maybe I need to add that item on. But essentially, as you traverse through those screens, the system is actually going to pre-populate all of the information that you need. So then you can just go ahead at that point and save that document. And then that will create that purchase order. And then the next dialog box is, in terms of process workflow, is going to be that PDF of that purchase order. So as you can see on screen, we can either preview the document, we can print it out, fax it if people are still using fax machines, or we can go ahead and email it from the system as well. So that's super helpful to us. So we can actually order the parts, send it off, forget about it until it arrives, and then we can do our goods in from purchase order in the system, bring the inventory into the system, and then consume it against the work order. So if I hit the close button on that, the system is then just going to drive us straight back into our work order that we're working on. So if I cancel out of that, you can notice there on the quantity box behind that box that was just up on screen, those quantity lines were red initially because they were unallocated. You can see they've now turned amber. What that means is it means they've been ordered, but we're awaiting goods receipt. So as soon as those items have been delivered, we can then, as I mentioned, do the purchase order goods receipt, and then those line items will turn from amber to green to indicate that we have, a positive pick against third-party vendor parts. So, I mean, that in a nutshell is essentially the feature that we've delivered here. As I mentioned, you can predefine those parts in the system, and you can make your own decisions whilst you're in one screen. You can look up your own inventory. You can make those decisions on the fly as you need to. So just helping that whole process flow. Madeline, have we got any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. We have a couple questions. One, is there an integration with Smart Equip?
So yes, so we can create integrations. We have certainly done that with other customers in the past, where we integrate with other third-party systems to call out and look for stock levels, inventory levels, or actually call out to automatically create a requisition or automatically create an order. We obviously need to look at that as an individual case-by-case basis in terms of API integrations. But yeah, absolutely, it's certainly an area of the system we can look at for integrations.
Awesome, thank you. And then, can you have more than one preferred vendor per part?
Yes, absolutely. So you can have as many preferred vendors as you like for parts, and you can, again, make those decisions. You can actually mark certain vendors as more preferred. So you can actually, create a league table of vendors to say we go here first, and then we can go down to this level thereafter. But yeah, absolutely. There's nothing stopping you from creating as many preferred vendors as you like.
Well, thank you. We have another question. Are status notifications within RentalResult or email? Is there a chat function within each work order or purchase order?
So a chat function?
Yep, a chat function within each work order or purchase order. Is it within RentalResult, or is it through an email?
So that would be through an email currently. So there isn't currently a chat feature available to, obviously, I guess, instigate a conversation through to a vendor, if I've understood the question correctly. So we can kick out and send emails out of the system, as I mentioned, with those dialogue box that pops up. So we can actually start the dialogue through an email and push that through the relay within the system.
Yeah, they added, this is from Stefan, he actually added a little bit more detail to this. So in this reference, it'd be to discuss part requirements with techs or part staff.
Yeah, I got you. So that would currently be outside of inside the work order, either through Teams or WhatsApp or something like that. But it's a great point. I'd love to connect with Stefan afterwards and talk through a little bit more and see what options are available for us to, look at feature enhancements there.
Awesome. Thank you, Jimmy.